You're listening to Oneofus.net.
One of Us is a podcast and video network funded all but entirely by donations and subscriptions. We do accept pitches for audio-based or banner ads, but on a case-by-case basis. If you're interested in that, contact us at oneofusnet@gmail.com. With the amount of audio and video content we generate, it is expensive and extremely time-consuming to keep things running. Please go to the webpage oneofus.net and sign up for a subscription at $2, $5, $10, or $25 and get a ton of bonus content. One of Us needs and appreciates all your support.
I've explained this before in the other reviews for the House of Dragons or whatever the fuck this show is called, that I am not necessarily the audience because I am not necessarily a fan of Game of Thrones. What I mean by that, though, is that I didn't watch Game of Thrones when it was first coming out. And then, it was such a huge, part of the cultural zeitgeist. Everyone was talking about it all the time. Like, everyone was just watching every Sunday. People were going gaga for it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I finally caved in. I was like, I should finally check this thing out. So I started watching the show, the last 2 seasons of the series. And I was kind of like, this show kind of sucks. Why is everyone so up in arms about this whole thing? Like, this is kind of a crappy show. And now, granted, I mean, I was kind of like, I was in it. Like, it was almost like such filler TV. It was like no big deal. I didn't really care about it. And then I started telling people like, oh yeah, I'm starting to watch Game of Thrones. Like, oh really? What do you think about the first couple seasons? Like, I haven't seen that. I was like, what? Where did you start? I was like, I just started this season. I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, there was a red wedding. I got it. And so that's how I was always played it off. And still to this day, I have never seen Game of Thrones.
Oh, you're killing me here.
I know. And so here's the thing. So when the House of the Dragon came out, I was like, okay, let me do this right. Let me start with this bullshit whole world and let me start watching this from the first season. And boy, howdy, do I hate this show. Granted, I don't like it. So with me today to talk about House of the Dragon season 3, of course, I have Ryan.
Hello.
And I have Dom, who hates me right now.
I don't hate you, but you're hurting me. You're hurting me.
That's why I'm here. I am like Prince Damon, here to hurt and just confuse and irritate you for an entire season. So this is season 3 of House of the Dragon, and okay, now here's the other thing too. I'm really bad at this. Not necessarily just only hosting reviews, because I'm not that really great at that either, but I am not great at pronouncing names and or the connections between characters, because this is also a funny thing that Game of Thrones is always about, like, trying to connect people and pronounce their names, and no one, no old white person can figure out like Queen Rhaenyra, hoo-ha. So like no one can ever, remember shit. I am right there with them. Because everyone's name is way too similar or way too different, and you don't talk about them enough to really remember them. So I'm going to do my best.
Especially in House of the Dragon, I feel like.
Especially.
We have a bit on my show where it's like, how many times can we screw up the Targaryens' names? And we've done it at least 3 times every single episode.
Understandable.
I hate this show. Anyway, so season 3, where we left off, was where things finally started to get interesting. That's why season 2 is abysmal. Listen to my last review for season 2. So shit was finally about to start actually happening, which I was like, okay, that's cool. There's going to be a war and some shit. And I love how the first episode starts where it's King Aegon was burned alive or whatever from a dragon, some shit, played by Tom Glenn Carney, and Queen Rhaenyra, Emma Darcy, was still like, I want to be queen. And I'm doing my best impressions of these people, and I'm kind of summing up really well. And Matt Smith is still Prince Daemon Targaryen, who is kind of like, he's Queen Rhaenyra's uncle, who's still fucking her, and he's like the king?
King consort is the term.
King consort, that's what it is. And they're still trying to vie for what's the main place called again?
The Iron Throne in King's Landing.
King's Landing, thank you.
Yeah.
To be the ruler of the 7 kingdoms, I believe that's what it's called. And of course, Olivia Cook is still Queen Alicent Hightower, who was like, oh my God, if the king Aegon is all fucked up because what's his face? Hold on, let me get this.
Prince Aemond.
Is Prince Aemond, who's a piece of shit, who is I actually love him in this show. Ewan Mitchell. He's pretty fun. He's very gross and weird, and I kind of like him with his like fucked up eye. And I'm speaking so generally about the show. I kind of love this. Anyway, so as I remember, since now King Aegon is presumably dead, they're like, holy shit, we could take over King's Landing right fucking now. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, because it really felt like season 3 was starting to pick shit up, because that's what they end up doing. They just kind of like start walking in like a bull in a china shop in King's Landing and take over everything. I was like, fucking A, things are goddamn happening in this show. I'm kind of like it. And then like the third or so episodes, like, you remember Game of Thrones? I was like, no. I was like, ooh, well, there's a lot of episodes when people are just talking about like how hard it is to be a king and a queen in this show. I was like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, you didn't watch the first like 5 seasons. Like, yeah. It's like, okay, so it's a lot of boring. Have you ever seen like, The Office? I was like, yeah. It's like, yeah, it's like that with swords. I was like, oh, is it funny? No. I was like, oh, am I going to like this? No. So it starts to get boring, but I'd love to hear what you guys thought about season 3 of House of the Dragon. Dom, you know more about this dumb shit than we do, I'm assuming, Ryan. But let's talk. I know you're a huge fan of the books and Game of Thrones as well, but let's try to keep it about like the season 3 in general and where it goes. But
okay.
What are your general thoughts?
I'll do my best to sum it all up here, because I have a lot to say about this. Yes, I am basically like a Thrones scholar at this point. I've read all the books. I've read the books multiple times. I've seen the show multiple times. I dive deep in terms of like kind of the themes that George R.R. Martin tries to go for with this series, and why he constantly comes back to very problematic people in positions of power, and how it seems that no matter who is ruling, no matter who is in positions of power, no matter who, whatever right intentions they may have versus whatever kind of birthright claims they think they have, and ultimately is all meaningless, and ultimately is all bullshit. Power is inherently corrupting, and nothing good ever happens to those who sit the Iron Throne. And that's kind of the universal constant theme throughout this whole series. And as far as kind of why I gravitate towards it, I obviously enjoy a little bit more of realism to fantasy. It was such kind of a stark contrast to the fantasy that I had growing up, like Lord of the Rings. But as far as House of the Dragon goes, to say that the final season of Game of Thrones literally like kind of had to cause a very visceral reaction for me, given that the penultimate episode of that show literally caused me to land in a mental hospital because I was just so like kind of lambasted by what I was watching, that I needed sort of a palate cleanser. I literally spent all of COVID recapping the original show. And so when they announced they were doing House of the Dragon, I was worried, to say the least. And I'm like, okay, cool, more dragons. So just more of the action spectacle that we liked from the last 2 seasons. Okay, cool. But then the first trailer came out. I watched the first season. Really, really surprised me. Really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of a throwback to Game of Thrones of old. And it also helped that they had one of the original one of the original directors as the co-showrunner on the first season, Miguel Sapochnik, who directed some of the best episodes of the last couple seasons. He directed Battle of the Bastards and Hard Home, and the 2 big action spectacle episodes of the last season, Long Night and The Bells. And then he walked after season 1. There was some behind-the-scenes dispute of it. I don't really know what the specifics of it are.
It's like, I think the show is kind of bad. I'm like, oh, okay.
I don't know if that was what it was, because, again, I really liked the first season. But so you have his co-showrunner, Ryan Condal, as the sole showrunner going forward for season 2 and now this season. And that, to me, is when the problems with the show really started. But in addition to the show itself, which has had its ups and downs for sure, I feel like for me, the biggest issue for this comes from the adaptation of the text that they are adapting. Whereas the way in which the book that this is adapting, Fire and Blood, which is a loose history of the Targaryens as presented by a maester and a fool, is written in a very... Oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? It's written in a very unreliable narration. It's written more so as a history text rather than a fictional narrative. So the ways in which
what is it called? It's like a kind of like a World War Z, where it's all like taking place from like anecdotal like stories.
Yes, very much so, very much so. So that's the way in which it is written. So it allows the showrunners here to be a lot more loose with the adaptation to the point where they can basically just directly change stuff. They can make up stuff that wasn't necessarily in the original text, that they can all kind of have it go forward. But it makes for, I would say, an interesting adaptation to say the least, because certain parts are really good, certain parts are really not good. But the biggest problem that I have with this season overall and with kind of the show in general is that they're doing this thing now that a lot of fantasy shows are doing that I am not a fan of, which is where they blatantly tell the writers to not read or be familiar with the original source material at all. And you can take that however you will. For me, at least, as a little bit of a purist, I'm like, you should at least have some familiarity with the thing you're adapting, you know? Like, I think that to try
I'd
to
agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Call me crazy, but I think that's just like, should be a substandard. So like, when you have showrunners or writers on the new Lord of the Rings show that have never read Tolkien or have no familiarity with him whatsoever, and now the same thing with this House of the Dragon, who are actively being told, do not read the source material in which this is based. I don't know. That just immediately raises a lot of red flags for me.
I agree with you in a lot of ways when it comes to, like, you know, at least reading the original text, because it does feel like at times where, like, their idea, I guess, for the people who have not read or, you know, trying to directly adapt anything, they're just like, okay, and the dragon, like, but what if they fucked? It's like, okay, which I'm like, whatever. It's like one of the, you know, the prestige TV shows on HBO, because HBO is, you know, a big deal. And when they do things, you're like, okay, well, we got to have some nudity. Which always seems like it's the case. It's like,
waiting for the alien nudity to pop up on Lantern so far that I've watched half the first episode.
Come on, let's go. But Ryan, are you, because did we do any of the previous reviews together?
I don't. I in terms of like Game of Thrones related stuff, I don't think so, or at least I don't recall if I did. So I think that. Okay, so I guess where I stand with Game of Thrones is like very unoriginal. Like I enjoyed a lot of Game of Thrones until I didn't. Until like I feel like the last. I honestly I was kind of with it until season 8, and then I started looking back and going like, wait, actually there were signs that this was becoming a problem like earlier, and I just was
season
not
5.
willing
That's the
to.
season where it's like
season 5 is when it was like, ooh, the cracks were starting to show. With House of the Dragon, I liked the first season. I enjoyed it. I thought like, oh, this is kind of a return to form a little bit. I'm really not familiar with the source material. I've seen some spoilers like here and there. The second season I really found pretty disappointing. I didn't hate it, but I really think that, I don't know if this hasn't been brought up yet, but for the second season they had to cut the final 2 episodes essentially. Like they were originally, and that's why the beginning of this season feels like it's paying off things that happened last season, which was like
right.
And that was right. And something that's a huge problem is like now, like because of how much money goes into these massive like episodes, like if you're paying off things that people have watched almost 3 years ago. So there were things that were happening that I was like, oh right, like I kind of forgot about that, and I hadn't watched the second season leading up to it, so it feels like they're paying off all these things that would have been more. I think that if these first 2 episodes, which I actually enjoyed for the most part, the first 2 episodes of this season, I think that if they were at the end of that second season, I would have probably liked it more. But I think it's wild because like seeing Rhaenyra like sit on the throne at the end of episode 2, that feels like, oh, that's a season finale right there.
Right.
And I honestly have to say, like, even in the 3rd episode where Rhaenyra was dealing with being queen and just all of the bullshit and just she's making all these horrible mistakes and it's like they're having repercussions in the city, that stuff I kind of enjoyed. But it was just the entire middle of the season after that I felt like they were really just spinning their wheels and there just was not a lot of interest happening. And I was wondering, and again, as someone who has not read the source material, I was like, is there enough source material to drag this out? Like, should this just have been 2 seasons or like much shorter than it is? It feels like a lot of this is being dragged out. Cause again, the last episode I also kind of enjoyed a lot of, but it just that entire middle chunk just felt like
a slog.
A lot of filler. It was not as interesting as I think they wanted it to be, even though I really do think that a lot of the performances in this show are great. Like I love Emma Darcy is very good. Matt Smith is very good, and I like a lot of these actors. The one actor I don't like that drives me absolutely insane though is the woman who plays Missaria.
I don't know what they're doing with that one. I really don't.
And that whole plot, that whole storyline, I'm being very like scattershot right now, but that whole storyline with Missaria, I felt like I don't understand if her character is like more interesting or substantive in the book, but like she
white
really
worm.
does absolutely nothing. Like I
Well,
don't understand.
Again, it feels, I mean, granted, it's probably more in the book than anything else, but it still feels like a note from the, executives or other writers who haven't read their source material. Like, yeah, but what if they fuck?
Literally.
It's like,
and Ryan, it's funny because to answer some of your questions, the answer is, do they have enough source material to really stretch this out into 2-3 seasons? The answer is no, they don't. This really should have been just one more season to just recap the events of the book, because the problem is then when you realize that, like, oh, in order to have 4 seasons, they pushed like all of the majorly like awesome stuff for the next season, and then all of the like kind of stuff that should have just been one season, because really you could take seasons 2 and 3 and smash them together into one season. I think it would have been a gobsmackingly amazing season of television, where if you take all the events of season 2, cluster it into like 3 episodes, then you take like the first 2 episodes of this season, make that like episodes 5 and 6, and then cluster everything that happens in like episodes 3 through 6, make that like episodes 6 and 7, and then you have the final 2, then you have an amazing season of television. But it's the fact that they're so stretched out, there's so much meandering and spinning their wheels, and then when you finally do get to a great, amazing moment, it happens so fast that you're like, wait, like, so for example, right, are we getting into spoilers or not yet?
Spoilers, we all hated this, but okay, go on.
So for example, Kristen Cole's death at the beginning of episode 6, I literally, one of the biggest...
Was it episode 6?
It was episode 6. That was the opening scene of episode 6, which, again, already the fact that that's episode 6 is ridiculous, but one of the biggest gripes that I had with this when I was recapping this on my podcast was, like, why in the hell are we dragging out his basically episode-long suicide march to him basically going to his death, which is a thing that we set up not once but twice. First at the end of season 2, and then again the episode before. And then it's supposed to be like this big surprise when he tells Gwen, "Oh yeah, I'm marching to my death," and then he dies in the beginning of episode 6 in an event from the books that is supposed to be a pretty crazy event. Like the Butcher's Ball is supposed to be like an insane event where the Northmen basically like completely ambush him and brutally murder him, and his death pretty much happens the same way that it does in the book. But then the event happens and it's over, and 5 seconds later we're back to just more meandering and pointless politicking in King's Landing, like the fish feed.
Right.
We don't get the Battle of the Honeywine, all these events, and if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about, that are like supposed to be major events that happen for this section of the story we don't get, and instead we just have more like, oh, Rhaenyra, we have like, oh, Rhaena and Sheepstealer and figuring that out, and which again, that's that's another huge change that they made for the book, because the person who tamed Sheepstealer in the book is a completely original character who they just cut for the purpose of giving Rhaena something to do, because Rhaena unfortunately really does not have that much to do. And at first that's a change that I'm like, oh, that's kind of welcoming, actually giving Rhaena something to do, and then obviously the decision of how that drastically changes the Battle of the Gullet in terms of how that happens, where she's indirectly responsible for Jace's death. But in terms of what they do with that arc, it's like, okay, so the things that they're changing from the book, they're just changing for the sake of making changes. They're not having these interesting payoffs. And then the things that they're keeping the same for the book are just dragged out and kind of meandering and pointless.
Yeah, the Fabian Frankel, who played Sir Kristen Cole, I thought like they did him pretty dirty, because when I was watching the season, I was kind of trying to remember, like, why is he important? Like, who is he again?
Yeah.
And then like I had to like watch a recap or something like that of like his relationship. I was like, oh yeah. He fucked Alicent, and I was like,
and then even going back to before him getting cucked by Rhaenyra way back in season 1, and then him beating.
Right.
Yeah, like
I totally forgot about these things.
Yeah,
like
it really
if they truncated
2 years in between each of these seasons. It
really doesn't at all. Because again, what I feel like that is a hindrance to this show in general is that, granted, I've only seen the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. I will say that the characters that, for how terrible the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones were, that the characters were so interesting, regardless of what they were doing or saying, and how most of the time it was meandering, those last 2 seasons of a lot of it. I was like, wow, these characters feel so lived in. Granted, this is the beginning, like, the first season was the first season, but this is the 3rd season, and I don't like remember like what in the hell's going on with certain characters. Like, I feel like, when you were talking about Rhaena, like when she's found out that she was taming or trying to tame a sheep stealer, whatever the fuck's called, the dragon. I feel like then, like right after, like, wait, so that was like a few episodes ago. Where the fuck is she? What happened? And it just never brought up again or something. And I was like, what the fuck is happening here? And because they have too many characters spread out, everyone is, I would argue, incredibly uninteresting. Like, even for points like, I will say this, and I do love Matt Smith. I still think he is wildly miscast as Prince Damon. I don't like him as Prince Damon at all. I think he's annoying to a point to where I'm like, why are you doing this? It's like, you prick at this point. It's just like, God, fucking just get over it. And then Emma Darcy, I think that, man, what I do find interesting, which is like the meandering parts where she gets what she wants, and then it's like, and it's a story of like, but she fly too high, close to the sun, and then she's like, oh wait, is exactly what I wanted here? Like all the bullshit, just like I have to listen to the people and figure out what they actually need and want. I thought that everyone would just kind of love me, and like I kind of like that come to Jesus moment for her where she's realizing those things. And then it's kind of just arduous to watch her character go through these things,
Yeah.
more as a viewer, not necessarily to watch her character, like, because you see her just like kind of break down as like, oh fuck, this thing is so hard while all this other crazy shit is happening. And I guess I wish this was a smaller cast. Is that hard to say? I don't know for sure, because like I understand with Game of Thrones is like 150,000 characters you have to keep track of and blah blah blah. But like, I'm sorry, I'll argue The Wire did it vastly better than both of these shows combined. I'm assuming because The Wire, by the end of season 5, you're keeping up with 60 characters equally, and you care about all of them. And I'm like, why do I not give a rat's ass about Lady Bela? I don't know who that is, but she's like a daughter or something.
I will say, so the biggest difference to me, and I talked about this on my podcast as well, between this show and the original Game of Thrones is the fact that it is one of those instances where Game of Thrones having 8 seasons really did actually benefit it, because the fact that they had all of those characters, again, they had so many different characters, and they were always adding new people. Granted, they killed off a lot of characters, too, throughout the course of its run, but they were always adding new people. And like you were saying, to the point where when you got to the final 2 seasons, you felt like each of those characters was really interesting and lived in. It's because those actors have been playing those characters for a decade up until that point, and the characters have just had so much more time to be fleshed out. And the fact of also what Game of Thrones did so much better is keeping the characters separate and in their own storylines for so much of the show before bringing them all together. House of the Dragon, by virtue of the fact that it's only going to be 4 seasons in total, has roughly about the same amount of characters as Game of Thrones. Shortened episode counts too as well, because we go from 10 episodes from the original Game of Thrones to 8 episodes per season here. And the fact that they're all largely clustered in the same location or set of locations for the entirety of the show, it doesn't leave you a whole lot of room to develop them. And it also doesn't help that a lot of them to me are not as interesting as the original Game of Thrones characters. Like the original Game of Thrones characters, they all had their own like wants and needs and influences and motivations and traumas from their respective backstories. Like you could separate Jon Snow from Sansa, from Daenerys, from Cersei, from Jaime, from Tyrion, and the list goes on and on and on. And here it's like, oh, okay, Rhaenyra wants the throne, but she sucks at ruling. Daemon is just a Machiavel, and everybody else is just kind of there. And it really sucks.
I feel like what you were saying, Dom, like a lot of the characters are very one note in House of the Dragon. And looking back, it's kind of made me appreciate a lot of Game of Thrones characters more, because they are a little bit more 3-dimensional. But like you said, it's like they have so little time to develop them. I will say the one character that I did like a lot more this season, and I will say like I started looking forward to seeing him more than any other character, and I didn't feel this way in the first 2 seasons, was Aegon Targaryen this season. Like I feel like he has the best. He has the best arc this whole season, and I really liked his stuff, and I think that kind of like kept me going in a way. Like when they cut to him, I was like, oh, this is interesting, and it brings me back to Game of Thrones. It kind of reminds me of like the Jaime Lannister arc a little bit,
or the
like,
House of Arya.
And it's just, it really, I really felt like that kind of kept me going. And I like Emma Darcy's performance, but it really feels like she is just making the worst decisions possible, like at every single turn. And with Daenerys in Game of Thrones, I felt like I understood why people liked her and wanted to follow her. But with Rhaenyra, it's just at every turn, she's just making the worst decision possible. And it's hard to find reasons to like her. I feel like I'm kind of just watching all of these like little chess pieces on a board, kind of waiting to see what happens to them, rather than like being like truly invested in a lot of the characters.
Right.
And I wish I was more invested, but a lot of them are just, and Game of Thrones in this universe is all about like having these morally gray characters. But I feel like in this show, all of the characters are just, I'm just struggling to find things to root for or like about them, even like despite them being like bad people or what have you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like I thought about this watching the show. I was like, I don't like anyone in this show. When I say that, I mean, there's good performances and blah blah blah. I'm not talking about the actors or anything. I just don't like any of the characters. Like everyone is an asshole. Everyone's a piece of shit. And knowing that this is a prequel to Game of Thrones, like I'm assuming they all die, and thank God a lot of them do in this season. And I was like, fucking finally something is happening here, for God's sakes. But I kept on thinking, it's like, who am I rooting for? I understand from the dramatic irony from the first season that Queen Rhaenyra is truly the actual heir to the throne, because that's what what's his face I forget his name,
Viserys, played by Patty
Viserys.
Considine.
Thank you, Patty Considine, who actually did say, no, she is my heir and who is supposed to be the ruler. And everyone's like, a girl? Bleh. And so I get that. But then, yeah, like your point, Ryan, is like, she's making every terrible decision possible. I'm like, well, okay, so is Aegon awesome? But then I remember there's some clips that I've seen in Game of Thrones.
Aegon's not a great guy either. Like, Aegon, you remember back to season 1, he is not a great guy.
Yeah, I was like, so what are we fucking doing here? Like, I don't understand, like, why I'm, like, watching this at this point, only to review on Oneofus.net. You should listen and subscribe to all shows. But I'm more or less hate fucking watching this. Like, I don't like this show. I think it is a slog for the most part. This season at least picked up a little bit here and there when they were finally killing people that I was like, oh yeah, them. I was like, okay, whatever. But it was like a cool death sequence, I guess. And I didn't feel anything from this show, and I wish I did. Like, I thought, to your point also, Ryan and Dom, I think that the most interesting part was Aegon's arc. Even though, like, anytime they go back to that, I'm like, fucking A, he's with Larry's the clubfoot guy played by Matthew Needham. I was like, okay, this is all kind of interesting. And then, like, let's go back to see what's going on with Lord Corlys. I was like, the sea snake. I'm like, oh god damn it. Or going to like Hightower. I'm just like, okay.
You didn't like
I mean,
James
that's
Norton just hamming it up every scene.
which I actually liked his performance quite a bit. I was kind of like into that whole thing, but then I was kind of like, who is what was it? What's
Darren.
the kid's name?
Darren.
When he was brought in, like in the first few scenes, I was like, who is this? Like, I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason for that being the fact that we haven't seen him up until this point, because that was Alicent's fourth child, her third son, who, unlike Aegon, Aemon, and Helena,
Was a baby, right?
Correct. Well, so Aegon, Aemon, and Helena, who were her first three, were raised in King's Landing. Darren was sent south to be raised by the Hightowers in Old Town.
Right.
Famously away from the setting. So that's why he feels like such a new character, because for both us, the audience, and for a lot of the people in the show, he is. I mean, they knew of him, but because he was so much younger and he was raised away from so much of the chaos, like, this is the instance where being a book reader helps, ultimately. But obviously, if you've only seen the show, you're going to miss a few things here and there.
Well, not only that, but just like not have that connection. Because here's the one thing that I always remember what David Mamet always said. He's kind of a piece of shit. He is a piece of shit. But one thing he always talked about storytelling and screenwriting specifically is like, really try not to talk about characters who you have not seen yet until like you actually seen them. And because it's hard for the audience to associate the name with a character until they're finally like actually visibly introduced, which I would agree with. And this show has such a huge fucking problem with that shit when they are saying names that I'm just like,
on introducing characters before you actually meet them.
Right. It's so hard to keep up with that because the names are dumb. And
they're similar.
And
And some of them will have names that are the same as like prominent characters from Game of Thrones, and it'll throw you like, oh, there's another Joffrey, and it's just like, I don't know.
And it's like not the same Joffrey. Or the fact that Laris Varys, you literally changed the first letter of the name.
Right, and like also Aemon and Aegon, I was like, who's who? I was like, who's the one with the eye? Like, I feel like such a basic bitch when Rhaena, like I always feel as like, all right, the blonde one, the guy with the eye, the fucked up face one, Doctor Who, like it's like that's how I feel. Like I completely understand why every old person from the like there's all those videos that came out, like the old people trying to explain what Game of Thrones, like who's who, and like I totally get it. I get that. I understand it. And you know what? No harm, no foul. I think they're right. I think it's a geek level of like medieval fantasy that I'm not down with, because I love Lord of the Rings, and I've seen only I think the first season of Rings of Power or whatever it was, and I was like, okay. But like this kind of shit, I'm just like, God damn. I was like, I just wish people would either be killing each other constantly or fucking each other. That's why I watched The Witcher. Anyway, let's go into final thoughts. Dom, how about you lead the way?
Oh, man, I don't even know where to begin because I feel like I've only just scratched the surface here. But again, I recap the show, all 8 episodes of my podcast. So if you want more deeper thoughts there, I don't know about how like plugs for other stuff goes, but
hey, I plug stuff all the time.
So like go watch my 8-episode recap where we dove in deep for each episode over on Talking TV. But yeah, it's just this, again, I love the world of Ice and Fire, and I love Martin's writing so much. He was like the Game of Thrones novels and show were like pivotal experience for me throughout high school and early college. So I'll always come back and watch everything. And it also helps that we had Night of the Seven Kingdoms this year as well, which I think was very, very good. That was like kind of a much more kind of cohesive and focused narrative that really pulled back and made it a lot more smaller scale in a way that I feel like this show was this show was just missing. And for me, this is my least favorite season of the show so far because there were some fun action moments for sure that kind of bottlenecked both ends of the season. But overall, between all the problems behind the scenes, all the stuff going into it, the troubles with the narration, the fact that George R. R. Martin has famously disowned the show up at this point, that's another tidbit that we haven't talked about at all. He disowned the show because they made a major change for that to him, just screwed up the entire narrative. We still have one more season that's coming in 2 years. Will they right the ship? Does it even matter? Who knows? But overall, out of
2 years until the next season?
Yep, 2028 is when we will get the 4th and final season wrapping this thing. Yeah, out of 5, I gotta give this 2.5 out of 5 stars. Like there was too much meandering, there was too much not enough happening, and the stuff that we did get was silly to say the least. So yeah, 2.5 out of 5 stars for me.
Oh God, I agree. Ryan, what are your final thoughts?
So I think that even though I feel pretty lukewarm about this season, I think I did like it like more than you guys did. I think that there is some like there's some entertainment to be had here. I feel like just as an action show, if you just kind of view it that way, I think there is a lot of like really well directed like action scenes. Like I think like the first 2 episodes, there's some incredible moments. The last episode has some like incredible moments. I was a little bored during the midsection of this season. But I feel like there was enough, like especially with Aegon. I almost called him Aemond.
How many times
you wouldn't be wrong.
Targaryen's name?
No, I with everything with Aegon like really kept me going. I do want to see what happens. Like I feel like if they just combined the 2nd and 3rd season and then had like one final season, I feel like it'd be perfect because there is a lot of stuff in the 2nd and 3rd season that I really did like a lot. But I feel like it is just so like unfocused and a little all over the place. I did enjoy it enough to want to come back. Like I'm pretty interested in whenever we do see it, like in like 3-5 years, however long it's going to take them to make the final season. I think that it being finite and them being like, this is it, like that is going to bring a lot of like intrigue for me. I think that like I am looking forward to see more. But anyway, so I think I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 stars.
I actually enjoyed this season more than the first 2 seasons. Now that is extremely low bar. I don't like this show. I think it's a huge slog. I don't understand why. Like getting into this is it would be interesting to see have people watch this show first and then Game of Thrones like me. And just see it's like, oh God, more of this shit, and then all of a sudden see it's just like, whoa, out of the gates, this is actually supposed to be good. Because again, I've only heard great things about the first like 4.5 or so seasons of Game of Thrones, and I liked more of the action in this season. Like I agree with you, Ryan, that the first couple episodes, and there's some other shit that happens in the season that I was like, okay, here we go. It's like feels like it's picking up. It's just the pacing in this show is so fucking, like you said, Dom, earlier, is like it's so meandering. The second season, I think, is abysmal. It is so unfun. It feels like I was being tortured watching the show, and like I did not give that second season a good review at all. I was like, I kept on asking, like, why do I even do this at all? Like, it made me question like being a critic in the first place. Like, this show sucks. And then this season, I was like, okay, this feels like it's a path in the right direction. And then it's like, oh, hold my beer. I was like, oh, fuck. Because then you get to see all of, Queen Rhaenyra finally getting what she wants. And then everything's like, this is hard. And it's sort of, no one likes me. And then people have their own agendas. And like, welcome to the fucking show. I like, okay, we all know this shit. Why don't you? And also, I thought like Olivia Cook's character was totally sidelined, even though I think her character was kind of just like meh. Alison Hightower was just like, I just kept on thinking like, oh, why are you in this show still? Like, who cares? Because like she's the least interesting character. She's the only one that kind of like, I know what's going on here, but not you. And I'm like, okay, so you're not going to change anything now because everyone's like now oddly a few steps ahead of you because people are willing to kill each other. I don't know. I think the show sucks. It's like I don't care about the show at all. I'm gonna give it. And yeah, the dragons look cool, but I'm like, and also at the same time, like I don't care. So I'm gonna give it 3 out of 10 daggers in the ass, baby. Yeah, that's how I like to get
Shout
off,
out
like
to
the
Tommy
Hightowers.
Flanagan, Roddy the Ruin, R.I.P.
Right. Yeah. So good. So good. Yeah. That's it.